Hello and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. This is our preview show and we're looking ahead to the weekend semi-finals. First up, we're going to look at the junior semi-finals taking place on Saturday and Sunday. And to help me do so is our Oaks Conor Martin. And later on, we'll hear from Ruairi, Cunningham and Peter Nugent. And they're going to talk us through the intermediate semi-finals that take place at the weekend as well. Conor, thanks very much for coming on and joining me once again. I had you on 2 weeks ago to preview your game with Crossmaglen. Didn't quite turn out as you obviously would have wanted it to. Crossmaglen progressed to the semi-final and they're playing in the first of this weekend's semi-finals, and it's against Derrynoosa on Saturday at 5 p.m. in the Athletic Grounds. And I suppose this is probably the big one, and we'll get on to Darcy and Blake shortly. This is probably the big one. Crossmaglen, haven't seen them against yous. They're probably the favourites at the minute for the junior championship, and maybe they were the favourites before the championship even started. But Derrynoosa are one of the top 3 or 4 in the junior as well. They were in the final in 2019. This could be a fairly enjoyable game.
Yeah, Sean, obviously still a wee bit hurting at Ruairi previewing ourselves in the semi-final game, but sure, listen, fair play, the Cross, they were definitely the stronger side over the 60 minutes. A ridiculous second half in the end. They were extremely strong, and that's probably more tactics wise. They probably caught us out a wee bit. Now, not saying we didn't do their homework on them. It was just the way the game went. The very, very, very strong players coming into that squad, like all Ireland winners, as we said, and probably were the difference. Like Paul McGowan was absolutely amazing, excellent. He sort of rang the game from centre half forward. Now, not saying that our fellas didn't try our best to get on him, but just that wee bit of nice. He sort of knew what he was doing. He pulled the strings, and when they needed to pick up the ball, he was the guy who showed and probably picked up the ball and fed. So your younger fellas running off, and they were just able to hit the target. Looking at that, and probably the squad that they have, your man Declan Studdard come on as well. They probably changed the game for them, and I feel coming in against Derrynoosa, that probably might be the difference between the two. I feel that Derrynoosa do have a strong 13 to 14, possibly 15, but I'm not too sure what they have coming off the bench. And that probably could tell the tale in the end. I only sort of seen match reports against Cleavey, but I said they wouldn't be too happy with probably a 3-point win, was it, in the end? They probably were a better team, probably maybe with the lack of Conor McNally only coming on late, probably did sort of give the result a wee bit more a closeness, if you know what I mean. But as I said, looking at Cross, the way Cross have done this year and how they played against us, they would probably be big favourites in that game. But that's not to say Derrynoosa have been thereabouts, and I'll never give up, if you know what I mean. They're always there, nitty gritty, and they're always there towards the end of the championship. So you don't reach that sort of level without having a certain amount of ability.
And Derrynoosa, the last 2 years, as we said, in 2019, they got to the final on College Land. Probably surprisingly beat them going into the game. I think Derrynoosa were the favourites. Last year, Forkhill beat them in the semi-final, and again beaten by the eventual champions. Conor McNally is central to their game plan. He's their best player. He's one of the best players in junior football. He was obviously 2019 Junior Player of the Year. And as you said, he only came on against Cleavey, and while we don't know the ins and outs, whether he was carrying a knock, whether they just wanted to rest him, because I know that they play their football semi-final this week and their hurling semi-final next week, and there's a big crossover of players. If he's not fully fit, you would have to say that's a strong indication that Crossmaglen are likely to win this game. But on the other hand, he did come on against Cleavey, and he's had another 2 weeks of rest and recovery, so you'd imagine he's going to be ready.
Yeah, as I said, it's very difficult sometimes with dual clubs. Now, fair play to them for doing it, but it's very difficult when it comes around championship time and players have to choose, or players are playing week after week. It just comes with the territory, I suppose. Middletown do it as well. And there's a few hours. If he isn't fully fit, they probably would have fancied themselves to win that game against Cleavey anyway. So they probably said, maybe what's the point in resting him? And he probably come on with the last 5 minutes in order just to get a run out, get a bit of ball in hand and stuff. They probably had the game won at that stage. So listen, you don't know what teams do. I still think even with him on board, Derrynoosh will probably find Cross seconds stronger, but as it's championship football, semi-final championship, anything can happen. As I said, College Land beat Derrynoosh in the final the last couple of years and probably weren't fancied. So it's just really who turns up in the day. Now, if it was a betting man, it would probably be Cross seconds, and like that's literally all you can say. They probably give us a good hiding in the second half, to be honest with you. It's the best way to explain it, and we just have to sort of rebuild from that. I would maybe say that looking at it over the whole lot, that I think Cross seconds might just have a wee bit too much of them, but only time will tell, as we say.
I think based on your game, Cross McGlen they're so Cross McGlen to the same as the senior team. Hughes went 4 points up at the start of the game and they just never panicked, just come straight back in. They got a goal and a couple of more goal chances. Hughes went 4 points up again before half time, and again Cross don't panic. They stay true to the system or the way of playing, and as you said in the second half, they come out and they were much stronger then. The older players that you touched on are perhaps more experienced players, is the proper way to put it. Paul McKeown was sensational that night against Hughes at centre half forward, a position that I've never seen him play. He's known as a defender. Rico Kelly in the middle of the field. You had Colin O'Connor, whose pace is electrifying, and particularly at this level, he's really eye-catching. And Johnny McKeever as well in there. They have so many, top quality players that could be featuring in the senior championship, but obviously aren't this year. That's just such a big difference between them and Derrynoosh, that they have little All-Ireland winners and senior championship winners over the last couple of years.
Yeah, especially you'll find in sort of the junior league and junior championship, a couple of players can make a difference in a team. If you know what I mean, you always see the standout players, especially with Fort Hill the last couple of years. Obviously, they're county men. When them guys play, it makes a complete difference to the team. You know what I mean? It's sort of chalk and cheese. You just need maybe them 3 or 4 quality players in order to take the whole 15 to a new level. Now, it's great to have quality all across the board, but you'll find that you only really get that as you move up the levels. You know what I mean? As you're going into, if you're going into 1A, 1B, possibly 2A, that's where you're really getting a strong 15 to maybe 20 as well. Whereas as you go down to junior, you'll maybe see a few weaker players in certain positions. But I think sort of across seconds, the way to manage the game. Now, did we face the full might of Cross in the first half? Maybe not. Maybe that's what they had done a wee bit of homework. They've done the exact same in the league. They came out on top in the last quarter in the league, and it was probably the most of the second half. In our game, we sort of struggled to keep with them. But you would say, just if you're looking at it, having them players in your team is definitely more of a help than a hindrance. So it's just they probably just have that wee bit more of quality than Derrynoosh. Now, don't quote me as writing Derrynoosh off, because I could have egg all over my face if Dorsey or Derrynoosh come out and win by a couple of points. But my mind's telling me that it'll probably be Cross in the final.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that as well, Conor. I think I fancy Cross McGlen, but I'll not by no means writing off Derrynoosh, and I think Derrynoosh will enjoy heading into the game as underdogs with no pressure. It's not often probably Derrynoosh head into the game such underdogs, because they have such a good team and they have had for the last couple of years. But I think we're both going to go across McGlen that one for our predictions, and we'd imagine the Cross are going to move on to the final. Who they're going to play then, that's going to be decided on Sunday. This is in the Athletic Grounds as well, and this is at 2 p.m. It's Darcy against Balleek. This is a good old-fashioned derby game. Darcy probably weren't expected to be at this stage of the competition, while Balleek were always favourites to reach the latter end of the competition. Balleek obviously coming back from last year, losing in heartbreaking circumstances after a draw under replay to Fort Hill in the final. Balleek will be looking at this. They're a wounded animal. They're mad looking back to this junior final, Conor, and that hurt from last year is possibly what's driving them on.
Yeah, as I say, I don't think it'll be a soft game between them two. There'll be plenty of hits anyway. But looking at it, they're not saying the two teams probably haven't faced any sort of a challenge coming through the rounds. Now that's no disrespect to the teams that they faced. It's just the way it is. They probably have been expected to win every game that they've won. Going into it, you would probably say that you would Blake's are probably the stronger team than Dorsey, but having played Dorsey a good few times myself, I know that they'll never be a team that'll lay down and they'll fight to the very bitter end, as I say. So it'll probably be closer than most people think. With the likes of Callum O'Neill for Blake's and your young fella McVerry up front, they're a very, very strong side. I know it's probably only his first year, but having played them in the last league fixture, I think it was up in Silverbridge where we beat them, it was probably more their attacking was extremely good. They were probably just a wee bit more wasteful in front of goal, and if they were to get that under wraps, they probably would win the game. Very handy. They were quite wasteful against us, as I would say, whereas we took our chances, possibly goal chances. So the only way I would see it, I would see Billy being quite strong going forward, but probably maybe not in the championship so far because they only conceded 0-7 against the Summon in the last round. It would probably be the defence I would be more worried about in terms of what way Dorsey can open up that. Now, I know there's two fellas in midfield for Dorsey would be quite strong as well. So whatever way that battle turns out could decide the game. I'm probably going to go for Blake's. I would reckon Blake's will win this one. It'll be a lot tighter than most people think. And maybe that's probably a good thing for Blake because they've had such handy wins coming through. They probably want more of a challenge in the semi-final to really get their championship going. You don't really want to be going in winning each game handy. Now, it's good for your confidence, stuff like that there, but there's always them sort of 2 or 3 point ones that you win that maybe get you over the line instead of going in sort of, if you know what I mean, cold against cross seconds. You probably faced us now. Not the scoreline probably suggests it was a handy enough win for them, but Derrynoosh are going to give them a good game. So they probably really want Dorsey to stand up and be counted, if you know what I mean. And especially a local derby, it's going to be intense. But I would have to say Blake probably have a wee bit more than Dorsey in that one.
And it's all on the line, Conor. Obviously, as you say, in a local derby, anything can happen. Just looking back to last year, these sides met in I think it was the quarterfinals of the Junior Championship, and Blake were obviously in flying form, and they defeated Dorsey 2-15 to 1-8. And as you said, it was their attack that day, obviously, that caused all the trouble. Sean McCreesh hit 1-6, while Callum O'Neill hit 1-5. And Callum O'Neill's picked up a bit of a different role this year. He's known as a midfielder, probably, for Blake. He's wearing the number 6 jersey, and unfortunately, I haven't got seeing Blake this year, and Sunday's the first time I'll get seeing him this season. And I'm just excited to see how he's adapting to that centre half back role and what he can bring the team. I can just imagine his drive and runs from deep are going to cause many teams trouble.
I haven't played against him myself this year. For such a big fella, he has a sort of frightening turn of pace. He can get round you very easy. He's sort of like a Sean Cavanagh sort of player that I would describe him. You know what I mean? He has that wee bit of, he'll shift his weight and you'll probably go one side and before you know it'll pass you. So usually you sort of have big fellas that are quite sort of lumpy and they're around the middle just to catch ball and feed it on, especially at junior level. But he seems to have a bit of an engine on him where he can get up and down. Now, unfortunately, against us in the league, I think he went off with an injury in that day, so it probably benefited us in that match. Like, listen, he's a very, very good player, and he could probably be the difference between the two teams if he really wanted to. As I said, it'd probably be very hard. I'd be surprised to see who picks him up for Dorsey, and it'll probably be a man-marking job on him. But listen, Blake probably have a lot of 3 or 4 other decent players that need picked up as well in terms of in the forward line. I would say I'm probably going to be 100% off. I'd say that Dorsey will probably drop on a sweeper and probably try and hit them on the counter attack. I'd say goals probably will be a big score in this game because if Dorsey are sort of still with you coming into the last 10-15 minutes, they're very dogged and stuff like that there, and they'll probably kick important points at important stages. So I would say Blake's would need to probably have them dead and buried with them 5 or 10 minutes to go, because it can get very nitty gritty, especially at championship level if you're not that far ahead.
And Dorsey, they do have enough quality to pose questions, don't they, Conor? Like you mentioned, their midfield, like Conor Moley there, Aidan Mackin up front, Barry McGurk, the cornerback, he got our player of the week last weekend. So they do have quality to pose questions of, but like it's just a question of whether they have enough quality to really test this Blake team who are full of experience and obviously, as we said earlier, carrying the herd of last year into this championship.
Listen, if I was in Dorsey's shoes, like you have nothing to lose there. You know what I mean? Everybody's saying that they're not expected. That's a position you want to be in. You want to be going in like that because at the end of the day, it's championship football. It's why everybody plays football. In my point of view, you go out there and whoever on the day is better and wins the game. Like especially with a knockout feature that we have. Listen, it'll be tighter than people think, and I would say as Blake will be going in there and as any team will be taking it extremely serious. They want to reach an hour final. They want to make up for the hurt of last year. But by no means Dorsey will lay down and let them just stroll into the final as it should be expected.
Yeah, and I think we're both going to tip Blake here as well. Conor, we're going to agree on our the two semi-finals and who we feel is going to win.
Yeah, well, I don't think either of us are willing to take any risk here, but I would say we'll probably be seeing a crossing Blake's final, and it probably would be expected between them two teams at the start of the championship that will be the case.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think we're going to see a cross and Blake final. But no doubt we've give Darcy and Darrenus a bit of ammunition coming into the weekend, and as we say, we'll be covering all those games and make sure to continue voting for your player of the week this week to see who picks up a fit player of the week jersey, and look out for next week's after the semi-finals are all played. Conor, thanks very much for coming on, and we'll look forward to two exciting games at the weekend.
No problem, Sean, and best of luck to all the four teams actually. I don't want to just start picking two favourites, but best of luck to them all.
Good one, thank you, Conor.
Thanks, later.
Lads, first up, it's Tullysarn against Carrickcruppen. This game's on Saturday night at 7 p.m. in the Athletic Grounds, part of a double header. Cross McGlen Juniors and Darrenus takes place before it. So this one, Tullysarn, we've talked about them a good deal on the podcast before. I think we're fans of Tullysarn, certainly from last year. And Carrickcruppen, we've seen them as a dark horse nearly from the start of the championship to come and maybe do something in the latter ends of the championship. Peter, Carrickcruppen coming into this game, Division 2B winners, loads of momentum behind them, beat College Land and Wolf Tones in the first round and the quarter final. This is the first time they've come up against a team from Division 2A since St Paul's last year, which they lost. So there is going to be a step up here for Carrickcruppen.
Oh, of course, Sean, and we've touched on that before. You know, I think we've nearly put that as a wee bit of a caveat in terms of, you know, tampering our expectations on Carrickcruppen. We've sort of acknowledged that the teams have played to date. Whilst College Land really give them a really stern examination for maybe 45 or 50 minutes. They were expected to come through that one and they did and done a professional job in the end up, despite being a wee bit wasteful, you could say, through the game. And then against the Tones, it was just probably a performance that was more mature than their tender enough years would actually probably permit them to do. So they're coming up against a step up in opposition, and we know that Tullysarn when they tap into it have a really fluid game. But the thing that sort of will entice you to this one is the fact that there's no real evidence to suggest that either team's going to play, you know, with a lot of negativity. Both teams to date have shown that they're quite willing to go for it and to commit to attack. So, you know, given what we've seen probably so far in this championship, this could be a real breath of fresh air and football played hopefully in the right spirit, the way it's meant to be played.
Yeah, I think we are expecting a good game this weekend between the two. From what we've seen, they both like to attack. And Ruairi, Carrickcruppen coming into the championship, they knew that their side of the draw, no matter what happened, they were only going to be playing Division 2B teams, and having won the league, they were going to be favourites in both games, and that's the way it played out, that they were favourites against College Land, favourites against Wolf Tones, and they won both games. This weekend, coming in, not massive underdogs probably, but they are underdogs. Maybe a wee bit of pressure off them that no matter what happens on Saturday, they've had a great season. They're league winners. They've made it to the last four of the championship. So no matter what happens, they've had a terrific season, and maybe they're not going to feel as much pressure as Tullysarn will.
Yeah, I think they're coming into the game in a good place. I think that they'll have learned a bit from last year, and I think they'll have to show a bit of experience. When they played College Lawn the first game last year, and came through quite easy. And then, they met St. Paul's and went gung-ho, all out in a shootout and caught in the big pitch. Now, I don't think they can go completely in a shootout in this game. They're playing, this will be the best team they've played in 2 years. Tullysarn are, one of the best intermediate teams in Armagh, and the results over the last 2 years have shown that. So I think they're going to have learned a little bit from last year. But in saying that, the way they've come through their 2 games and looking at their league results, especially this year, they haven't been conceding a huge amount. And I think defensively, they're showing a wee bit of experience. They have improved, but they'll have to, Tullysarn has probably, maybe outside of Sarsfield's the strongest forward line in the division. Gavin Conlon, Eddie Mullen, and young Mark McKeever will take a lot of watching. So the matchups for Carcruppen will be very essential at the back. Now, Tullysarn will have plenty to watch with Carcruppen up front, and as I said, Owen Woods, possibly James Madden matchup there. Tiernan Kelly, they have, and obviously a wee bit more experience with Lahern in full forward. But Tullysarn will have to get, I assume, Mucker Conlon will pick him up. But Tullysarn will have to get their matchup straight as well. But I expect a flowing game of football, and the big pitch will suit that. But I think Carcruppen will have to learn from last year's St. Paul's game to get the result over the line. They can't go into a complete shootout here, or Tullysarn will nip them.
And on that issue of matchups, Peter, I think the big one and the crucial one that if Carcruppen are going to have a chance, Owen Woods was terrific the last day out. He scored 1-3 all from play against Wolf Tones. James Madden, on the other hand, was terrific in Monmark and Jamar Hall against Farkhill. That is the matchup that's going to happen, I imagine, and that's going to be crucial to who's going to come out of this game. Tullysarn need James Madden to shut down Owen Woods, and if Carcruppen are going to cause an upset, they need Woods firing all cylinders.
Yeah, of course, and I think, and to be fair to Owen Woods, Sean, he's probably now in the territory of being probably maybe the most marked forward in intermediate football at the minute, because he gets talked up a lot on here. But he's the way I would sort of, haven't seen Cruppen's 2 games to date, I don't think he's really caught fire yet, and that's probably, if I was in Tullysarn's camp, I'd be slightly worried about that, because you only keep a good player down for so long, and he did come up with the game-winning goal against the Tones, but we know that he's capable of probably doing a lot more against College Land. He commended, in the last 20 minutes or so, but they would probably been pretty happy with how they kept them under wraps for a large part of the game as well. So, I would be expecting that he'll be well afoot this weekend, and he'll probably like the idea now that the opposition might just commit a little bit more to the attack and maybe leave a wee bit of space the other end for him to try and exploit. So look, I think Madden's confidence is certainly going to be really high after the job he done on Jamar Hall. He was very sticky, and that's, I suppose, if you're looking at man marking duties, you want somebody that wants to sacrifice their own game to a degree, not to be getting involved in support runs and things like that, because when that happens, then you can take your eye off the ball in terms of the actual man you're trying to shut down. So I think it looks like an obvious matchup, but my feeling would be that Woods could be his Madden's biggest test to date.
And we sort of touched on Carcruppen's mindset coming into this game. That they've all the momentum coming in behind them of winning the league, and the fact that this has been a terrific season no matter what happens. Tullysarn's maybe the flip of that. There's going to be pressure on them. They probably felt they should have beat St. Paul's in the semi-final last year. That a superb start. They got 2 goals in the first 5 minutes and just couldn't see it out. This time around, they're obviously playing in a division higher. there is a slight pressure on them that we're nearly expecting them to go on and get into this championship final now.
Yeah, and there will be favourites. And I suppose in a lot of games last year, they didn't wear the favourites tag that well against St. Paul's. In a game that after beating Sarsfields, they would have felt they were favourites. But I think that again, Tullysorn have a lot of experience in there. They've learned again from last year, and again this year they've proven that there were no flash in the pan. They really, acquitted themselves well across the league. I think they'd like to play better than they played against Forkhill. Whilst they won that game and controlled it for large periods, they didn't play as fluidly as I've seen them play in previous years, or even in the league sometimes this year. So I think Tullysorn will know they've a lot to improve on, and I don't think they'll come into this game underestimating Carrickcruppen. They know that Carrickcruppen's a good side. There isn't a huge, gap between Carrickcruppen and 2A. After all, Carrickcruppen will be competing in 2A next year, and I think they'll acquit themselves quite well in 2A. So I don't think Tullysorn will be in any way arrogant coming into the game, and I think that'll help them in terms of the pressure. They will be well respectful of what Carrickcruppen has. They know they can put up good scores. They know they've a lot of young talent, a lot of lads involved in the county under-20s as well. So I think that'll focus the Tullysorn minds, and I think that will just give them enough to get over the line.
And Peter, before we get our predictions for the game, I want you to put your coaching hat on, and if you were in Tullysorn's corner at coming up to Saturday's game, Blaine Hughes, we've seen Blaine Hughes' role now. We've seen it loads of times across all three championships, the sweeper keeper now. Blaine Hughes obviously has been playing at the highest level for 5 or 6 years now. He's an experienced keeper, but has experience playing out the field as well. How would you counteract that? Like, Blaine often is up at the other end of the field creating attacks, and we've seen that against Wolf Tones, that if there's a turnover, he can come driving out the field. And I don't think he's gotten a scoring position yet, but it could happen at some stage on Saturday night. How would you counteract that? Are you looking like an Al Morgan to push up on that, or what's the best way to go about that?
Well, I think if we accept that he will come out now, in fairness, in the Tones game, he was quite restricted, but that was more a case of, Carrickcruppen were leading for the majority of the game, and, in the second half, their lead was going out to 4, 5, 6, 7 points. And, I think it was a bit of a giveaway that they're not overly fussed on them going too high when they're in control of the game. I think we've seen when they really need to go for the jugular against College Land that you've seen them playing a much more aggressive style, getting higher up the field and pressing their kickouts from in around the middle of the field and carrying the ball forward and being a real thorn in College Land's side on the attack. If they're in the position over the weekend when they're behind and he is forced to come out, from a Tullysorn point of view, I think what you have pre-planned is you look at the Cruppen defence and you look at probably their least capable ball player in their defence, and you then assign a forward to actually tag Blaine in open play. And if you have to leave a defender, you be careful about who you leave. You don't leave a capable ball player free. You leave probably just by form of identification. But to allow Blaine Hughes to play 1-2s in the build would be criminal. I don't think Tullysorn will allow that to happen. If they've seen the games today, they've seen that College Line game, they'll know his influence can be mighty. And in my opinion, if you're serious about stopping him, you would have to personally identify and tag him.
I'd be interested to see, just on the kickouts, if Blaine does come out to press the kickouts, I'll be interested to see if Tullysorn are brave enough to kick it at him and to see how Blaine deals with that, because, I have an interesting theory that if Blaine was to contest that kick out and lose it, how would Carrickcruppen react? Have the thought about, if Tullysorn kick that kick out to them and they lose it, and Tullysorn move the ball kick, are they leaving the nets open? Is somebody going to drop back in? Is Blaine going to be caught out of position? So there are risks to, keepers going and pressing, and I'd be interested to see if Tullysorn have thought about that.
Well, Ruairi, is there really a risk? I mean, this is something that I've given a bit of thought to, and when that ball is airborne and maybe Blaine will be hanging in around, say, the middle third of the field to compete, if the ball doesn't go directly to him. If it goes 15 yards, 20 yards either side of him, and it becomes apparent that Tully Sarn have won that particular ball. I mean, he's not going to, per se, run straight to the man on the ball and try and put pressure on him. He's going to start to make his way back. Bear in mind, we're also going to have probably a 2-on-2 situation at the back anyway, where a defender can fall in the nets and Blaine can be travelling back and can already be covering off the space in front of his man. So, like, I think this is something that Jarrod Crooklyn have worked on. I think it's something that they've worked on in training, and I don't think it's. I think it's been well. I think they've carried a risk analysis on it, and I think they know that the benefits well outweigh the negatives. I still think for a goal to be conceded by a team that have pushed their keeper up on a kick out in play, I still think that that's going to take a lot of precise football, like a serious amount of precise football for that to come off. It's not a case of, you know, David Beckham chipping the Wimbledon keeper. You know, this is a different type of situation altogether. Everybody can use their hands here, you know. So defenders, I think we'll probably see Gaelic football even go into the position at some stage where defenders, like the last time your defensive full back line, will probably get some kind of goalkeeper training maybe in 3, 4, 5 years down the line. That's probably the way it'll go. But I think there's a lot needs to go right for Tully Sarn on that one for them to create an obvious goal chance if Blaine does push up.
No, I actually agree, and I think it's a great tactic or it's a strength that Jarrod Crooklyn have, that they have a keeper that can play in that role. I'm just thinking about how Tully Sarn counteracted.
Yeah.
And if it was me, I would kick the ball directly at Blaine, you know, so that he has to contest that kick out. Because if he doesn't contest it, say Tully Sarn win that kick out clean. And then, as you say, yes, Jarrod Crooklyn can filter back, and I'm sure they've practiced on that, but that would cause most confusion. And I think that if Jarrod Crooklyn do put that aggressive press on, I would like to see Tully Sarn attack that aggressively. Kick it to Blaine and see how Jarrod Crooklyn react to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt, lads, we are going to see that, and Tully Sarn will know that Blaine has a tendency to come out, so they're going to have a counter plan for it. And I think an interesting dynamic is Sean Black, the Tully Sarn keeper, and I'm willing to be corrected in this. I think he has played outfield as well at times for Tully Sarn. Anybody from Tully Sarn that
full forward, I've seen him once or twice in the in the latter stages of the league, and he can play okay, he can play fine.
If anybody from Tully Sarn wants to correct me, I'm nearly sure he come on against Tiernobe in the first round of the championship and played outfield, but I could be completely wrong on that. So 2 keepers, we're going to have really 15 on 15 outfield players possibly on Saturday evening. Ruairi, predictions, how do you see it going?
Yeah, as I said, look, I've been very impressed with Jarrod Crooklyn this last 2 years. They've improved a lot. I'm just not sure if they've improved enough. At the same time, I don't think Tully Sarn have hit anywhere near top gear yet. You know, they came through, struggled a bit against Portdown, but came through eventually. And whilst they won the game comfortably enough against Forkhill, I never felt that they really, you know, played to their potential. But winning games and not playing well is sometimes is a good trait to have. And I do think that Tully Sarn, if they click, should have enough to win this game by 2 or 3 points.
Peter, how do you see it going?
I think without saying, I think it's going to be extremely tight. But I think given Tully Sarn's league form this season has been a wee bit sketchy. Probably fell a wee bit short of the expectations where I thought they would be at this stage. I didn't think they set the world alight against what was, to all intents and purposes, a pretty ordinary enough Forkhill effort. And again, it was probably a pretty tame Portadown team that played, you know, in the first round. So, you know, do I think that they've really been like, are they really up to pace? Are they really up to, you know, that sort of level you need to be to win a semi-final? On the other hand, Jarrod Crooklyn, you know, have been winning games. We've talked about it before, but they've won probably 85-90% of the games they've been involved in over the last 2 seasons. They have a core group of young players that have come through together, and their mentality has been the one in the intermediate under-21 championship 2 years ago. And I just like what I see. I like the performance against the Tones. There was no frills, no spills about it. It was just, you know, very, very workmanlike, and they didn't really have to dip into too much of an X factor to get it done, but they do carry that. And they've got serious pace in their team, and I don't think Tully Sarn will have come up against anything like that pace in this championship to date. So I'm going to give a hesitant nod to Cruppen, because I like the balance they have. I like the fact that they've got that bit of unknown in terms of what Blaine can produce coming from deep, and also how he gets them moving from his restarts. And the thing about Cruppen as well, lads, is, and we probably haven't really factored in on it, but you can see frees against this team from 40, 50, 60 metres. They're more likely in not going over. And it's like between Richard Keenan and Blaine Hughes, they don't miss much. When their eye is in, their eye is well and truly in, and that makes them extremely dangerous. So I'm going to go for a hesitant nod to Cruppen.
With a vote for Cruppen or a vote for Tullysorn, I might just sit in the fence and call a draw. I had Tullysorn in my head. Peter has done a great job in convincing me that I'm maybe going to be wrong. I think Tullysorn's forward line might just be enough to get them through. Conlon, Mullen, McKeever, quality forwards at this level, and I think that might just be enough to see Tullysorn through. But again, not surprised if it's a draw or Cruppen can do something and cause an upset. Sunday's game then, man, this is probably the big one at the weekend, is Sarsfields against Colville. 6 weeks ago, when the championship started, when the draw come out, you were saying, yeah, Sarsfields are the favourites for the championship, no doubt about it, on Colville. If they're lucky to get past Shane's, won't make it probably to the semi-finals. They've got here in merit. They've been one of the best teams in the intermediate championship, certainly that I've seen. While Sarsfields have got here, probably haven't set the world alight in doing so. Didn't really have to get out of maybe second or third gear against White Cross, got through handy enough. They're coming into this league winners. They're promoted to the senior championship next year. No doubt they want to go up as champs and win the championship as well. Ruairi, this is such an interesting game, because on league form, Sarsfields should be winning this no problem. Colville relegated. Sarsfields haven't lost yet in 2021, but it's going to be much closer than that come Sunday.
Yeah, and I think last year's championship result, which was a tight game that was in the balance right up until the last 5-6 minutes, really, where Sarsfields just came through, and yet had destroyed Colville in the league 3-18-8. So, if that's anything to go by, they had a similar result in the league against Colville this year. But Colville have proven themselves to be a championship team. They've really picked up form. They're picking up results. In both championship games, they were probably, slight underdogs, especially against Shane O'Neill. So they've proven a bit of pedigree. They do have some, big game players. Something that I think is going to be key for Colville is the injuries. Collie Waters wasn't playing the last day. They will need Collie back in this game. The forward line is going to be very important. And there, Niall Rowland, essential that they give him a role that he can really drive at them. And he really carried the game to them last year down in the Harps. So that'll be key for Colville. Sarsfields, on the other hand, haven't really set the world alight, but have came through the two games relatively comfortably, you know what I mean? And come the last water break in both games have been in reasonable control. So they'll be happy with their work to date, and they come into this game as strong favourites, and so they should be. But I think that Colville have the talent. If they play to their strengths, I think Colville can't make this a shootout, because Sarsfields have too much forward quality. So Colville's going to have to look at what White Cross did well for reasonably and held them out reasonably, and be very patient and look at that quality at the break, Garvey and a couple of those players on the break, to really try and come into this game and bring that physicality that will be so important. The physicality that White Cross and Clonmore, and I was playing myself, didn't bring enough to Sarsfields is going to be important for Colville to complete. Because Sarsfields have been very strong around the middle. Their ability to win breaking ball has been very evident in both games. They've dominated midfield. So Colville's really going to need to focus on that physicality around the middle to get a foothold in this game.
And Peter, one of the men working around the middle of the field for Colville, and Ruairi touched on him there, was Niall Rowland. No doubt one of their star players, one of the best players in Armagh, obviously. Niall Rowland is getting married on Friday night, which is an interesting dynamic this weekend, getting married 2 days before the biggest game of the season. He kicked the winner against St. Paul's. He scored 3 points that day. He's their leader. He's the main man around the middle. That just offers a different dynamic going into this game, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, Sean. We're still sort of reeling from the all the hold-ups of 2020. So there's quite a few weddings and stags that we got in 2021, which has been a bit of a logistical nightmare for the majority of coaches and managers, I'm sure, around the county. And this is just unfortunate. Now I know there was teams were given a window way back at the start to suggest dates that maybe weren't suitable for them, but I see that this game's down for Sunday, and he gets married on the Friday, I think. So maybe Armagh did their best by him there, and that's the best date that they could give out. But there's no doubt it's not good for preparation. It's whether I suppose players want to take alcohol or not. It's if the majority of your teammates are there at the wedding. It's it's a late night. It's a day away, sort of maybe not where your focus maybe needs to be. Alternatively, it could be great. It could be like a team bonding day before the big day, and it could be nice and loose and jovial, and it could be the exact sort of thing they need. I suppose we're not privy to the goings on in their squad and what the sort of rules might be and things like that. So we can only speculate at the minute. But there's no doubt you'd probably be feeling a wee bit more comfortable and a wee bit more confident if you didn't have it coming up and probably taking out a large swathe of the senior group. But look, that's obviously just the position they find themselves in, and it is probably unfortunate.
And Rory, another interesting dynamic coming into this game. This game's on Sunday at 4:00 in the athletic grounds. And I done a club focus last year on Sarsfields and spoke to him and McGeown during it. And this was during lockdown, I think. So the 2020 championship hadn't begun yet. And one thing he was saying was that Sarsfields hold a hoodoo in the athletic grounds. They haven't won in the athletic grounds. Eamon McGeown, one of their older, most experienced players, has never won a game in the athletic grounds. The last time they won the intermediate in 2010, and that game was in Crossmaglen, and they actually beat Cullaville. And for the 10 years there that they were in senior level, they never won a game in the athletic grounds. Last year against Tullysarn, they didn't win against them in the athletic grounds. What impact does that have mentally going into this game? Like, Sarsfields were the favourites last year, no doubt, against Tullysarn. They're the favourites on Sunday. They haven't got over the line in the athletic grounds, obviously looking to break that hoodoo, but it's bound to be in your head somewhere heading into the game.
Yeah, in fact, it's an unbelievable stat, Sean. On that, you wouldn't believe it. Only it came from Eamon McGeown himself. And in fairness to Sarsfields, they had some excellent results in senior football. You know what I mean, when they were there. I think there's no doubt they will be carrying the baggage of that defeat to Tullysarn last year. And it was one of the shock results around, but they were well beaten, that day. And I think that they have carried that with them this year. And I think it's improved them. Maybe they took intermediate a little for granted last year. They were doing well in the league as well last year, cruising through the league. And the Tullysarn game was really the only game they lost, really last year. So I think that it has shocked them. Their preparation, and as I said, they haven't taken Clonmore or Whitecross for granted in either game. You could see they've done a fairly professional job on both teams, doing well enough to win both games. So I think that it will be extra motivation for them. They have a good group of lads there that won't carry any fear for Cullaville, and I think they'll be bursting out keen out the gate to break this hoodoo. And they're not quite at the Mayo level of hoodoo yet. I don't think it's that poor fellow passed away recently, but I don't think they'll be hounding anybody down or holding any curses over it. But I think it'll be extra motivation for them, that they have proven via the league that they're good enough in senior, and they'll want to prove that they're well good enough to win the athletic grounds, and take their place back in senior.
And Peter, before we move on to our final predictions, we'll look at matchups, a few matchups maybe that we could see. The two McGeowns are probably the big men for Sarsfields. Ruairi Garvey is going to pick up Paul McGeown, I would imagine. The Cullaville fullback will pick up Paul McGeown if he plays inside. out around the middle, could we see Nell rolling maybe on Paul McGowan in the middle of the field, two midfielders matching up? And I suppose what other matchups do you see? Will it be James McAlynn against Ryan Garvey in terms of the Sarsfield's defence, or what way do you see them lining up?
Well, I do think, Sean, how Culliver utilise Ryan Garvey is going to be important here, because if we look back to the White Cross game, I mean, White Cross came with a very obvious blueprint in terms of how they wanted to set up to frustrate Sarsfield, and there's no doubt that for 30 minutes, at least, they achieved that. The main problem, as we've already alluded to here, was the fact that they just did no counter plan. They just had no means of getting out. That was so slow, laborious, so laboured. And even in the first half, a number of their attacks, the quality of delivery inside the full forward line was often poor, but also the guys in the full forward line, if Callum McSherry wasn't there, were probably below par, if we call a spade a spade. So what I would like to see from Culliver, if they're really to ask the questions that we want them to ask here, is that they need to go with real potency in their attack, and whether that be having like a two-man situation up there with maybe Colin Waters and Ryan Garvey playing together, then that's maybe something that they're looking into, because you can get men to be organised and to funnel into position and to cut out space and to frustrate, but if you don't have that transition, that okay, when we turn this over, this is what we're doing, we're kicking it in from 70 yards for them to contest in 2-on-2s or even 3-on-2s, or we're going to play a hard running game, we're going to get men off the shoulder, we're going to get players coming on the loop to kick scores. If you don't turn up with any kind of plan, then all you're doing is really creating a death by 1,000 cut situation for yourself, and you're going to look like you don't really have a plan to win the game. So I would be fully expecting Culliver to come to this with a proper attacking plan. If they watch that White Cross game at all, they'll understand very quickly really what was White Cross's undoing in the game and why they were never really seriously competitive or seriously troubled. Sarsfields are troubling to go out of the competition. So I would expect them to put Garvey to full forward for the reason that I think Sarsfields struggle with height at the back, they struggle with presence at the back. Now they may go with Paul McGee to come in. He didn't start, he hasn't started, but that may be something that they're preempting. Brian Lavery as well could probably play at the back in the full back line as well if they come up against real size. But Garvey's a complete handful, and I know they're probably like the majority of intermediate teams, you probably need your best player, one of your best players in two places at once. But I think maybe just given that there is potential there for a mismatch in the Sarsfields full back line, I'd be thinking they could play him in there. As regards to Roland, I mean, we had a wee brief discussion before we came on here, and like I wouldn't be in favour for Culliver detailing now rolling onto any of the Sarsfields players. I would be saying, look, this is your best form of playmaking. This is the player that really makes you tick and gets you going on the front foot on the ball. So try and free him up. Try and get him, coming from deep with his head up. As we say, when they're building out from the back in those transition periods, have him on the ball a wee bit like Ian O'Rourke used to play for Drummond T, where he was just central to everything they'd done. They just worked the ball to 50, got the ball into his hands, and he was spraying 70, 80, 90 yard balls into the inside forward line. I think if I was looking at Culliver, that's what it would be. That's what I'd be trying to engineer for this weekend.
No doubt matchups are going to be crucial, and it's going to be very interesting to see what way both sides line up on Sunday. Ruairi, we'll come to you for predictions. This one's obviously extremely tight and could go down to the wire. I think in a semi-final there is penalties. If after extra time, we could be calling on them to decide this one. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think that Peter's right, and I think that Culliver will look at the template that White Cross did. I think, as I said, if Culliver make this a man-on-man game, that Sarsfields will have too much quality for them all over the pitch, and Sarsfields have a lot of depth and some quality in the bench as well. Michael Stevenson hasn't been starting some of the games, so they've quality players to bring on as well, Sarsfields. So I think that Culliver's going to make this difficult for them, and as I say, how they then work on the transition game is going to be key to how they compete. And I know that the mistake that we made was defensively we're going on okay, but we'll have too much of a gap to get up to that full forward line where I had a wee bit of quality, and that's a mistake. So that transition game and then supporting your players when you do have the ball to try and work some sort of quality ball in from 45 to 50 yards out rather than 70 to 80 is going to be key for Cullerville to give Garvey and Waters a chance up there, with some quality ball to do a bit of damage. I think if Cullerville is going to win this, it's going to be 12-10, 13-11. That's the type of game Cullerville want to play. And they can do it. They have that natural aggression. They play with, excellent spirit and drive that can get into Sarsfield's faces. And I think Sarsfields haven't really faced that yet. Someone that has really gotten their faces for an hour. Despite that, I think Sarsfields have too much quality. They've been very strong around the middle of the field. And if they can continue that domination with Eamon, and Paul floating wherever he likes, dictating, pressing high, the press very high in opposition kick out, swamping the breaks. I think that if they can pen Cullerville in, they'll pick them off. Now, I don't think they'll win this pulling up like they've won the last two games, but I think they'll pull away. I don't think we'll be seeing penalties in this one. I think Sarsfields will pull away with 2 or 3, maybe slightly more, 4.
I think I'm going to be the same as the other semi-final. I'm going to sit on the fence. I think what I'm going to put it down to is who I've seen performing best in the championship so far. And for me, that would be Cullerville. Even the last day without Colin Waters, they were superb. And although they could have lost in the last 5-10 minutes, they showed great character to kick the last 3 points now rolling, include getting the winner. I think I'm just going to slightly give the nod to Cullerville based on that. I've seen them playing twice now. Both games they were underdogs, and I thought they were superb in them. And if they can hold the Sarsfields attack, which big question marks over whether they can do that or not, I think they might just edge it. But again, like most of my predictions, not with much confidence. Peter, I'll give you the last word. How do you feel about it?
You touched on it there, Sean. You said that you were banking on Cullerville to hold the Sarsfields defense or attack. And it's on that reason that I can't go along with you. I just don't see it. If the 3 or 4 forwards, Sean, I might go along with your thinking. But they've 6 starting forwards and 2 midfielders that are all very comfortable in front of the sticks, and they all have an expectancy to score. I think the last day they all did score. So I just don't see. I can't see Cullerville shutting enough Sarsfield's players down here to give themselves a chance to actually win the game. I've no doubt that they're going to be attritional, dogged. They've got quality. They do have quality up front, and they will bring more to the table than anything probably that Sarsfields have played so far in an attacking sense. But I still don't see it being enough to cover the spread. I think Sarsfields forwards the last day, Paul McGeown, I think, got 5 points. Eamon chipped in with a couple. Keelan Skelton was playing at the base and just sort of dictating things. Colin Stevenson showing for everything up front, and there's probably not a defender in intermediate football can really get a hand on him because he's just that diminutive. And then you've got Cavi McAlinton supporting that, Paul McGahey, Tommy McAlinton, Michael Stevenson, who kicked a couple of sideline scores really the last day as well. So you start to run through the names and everything that they can do together as a unit and individually, and I can't make a case against them. I think, though, as Ruairi said, I can see it in a sort of 3 to 5 point margin win.
Lads, thanks very much for the discussion. 2 great games to look forward to, and as usual, we'll be covering it with updates, previews, and match reports as well. Make sure to vote for your player of the week as that continues until midnight tonight, and whoever the winner is once again gets a player of the week jersey sponsored by PlayerFit. Lads, thanks very much, and we hope for a good weekend of action.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.